What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today I am reacting to the infamous Tyra Banks show interview between Tyra herself, Tyra Banks, and Naomi Campbell. This is a 2005 episode. So the clips that I'm going to react to and insert into this video, apologies in advance. This is the best I could do, and I'll put the link in the description box and in the comments if you want to watch the full interview yourself. But I apologize in advance. The quality is lackluster. That being said, the quality of the conversation, the drama is well worth the watch. By the way, I am wearing red. I'm wearing this shade of red today for this reason, because red is the color of passion. It is also the color of tumultuous drama. And that is the understatement when it comes to this supposed feud or rivalry between Naomi Campbell and Tyra Banks. I'm gonna give you the Cliff Notes version on the history between these two women, two top models at the top of their game in the early 90s, though Naomi started earlier in the late 80s. And Naomi Campbell's career, this is just objectively speaking, definitely eclipsed Tyra Banks' career as a fashion model. But today, Tyra Banks is probably a bigger household name, at least in the United States, because of the business that she built around America's Next Top Model, the Tyra Banks show. Like, she really pivoted into the TV direction, whereas Naomi Campbell, I think, is still thought of as a top model, who, by the way, is still a working model today. Like, she still does runway shows and campaigns and all that. But so anyway, the Cliff Notes version is Tyra Banks came along a few years later, took the fashion world by storm, booked all these runway shows when she first started out in the early 90s. And this naturally created this tension between the two top Black models of that era. Now, the whole conversation about this was always like chicken or the egg, right? Like, is it that the press at the time and the fashion industry created this feud that really was not a feud to begin with, but it kind of like manifested itself as that? Or others say it really was Naomi feeling jealous that a new, younger Black model was coming for her jobs. It sounds crazy to say that, right? Like, obviously there's enough work, to go around. It's not like they were the only two models in the world, but the sad part is there's racism baked into this, because at the time, there really were so few successful Black models that I guess the idea here is that Tyra was then taking up gigs for like the one Black model in the space, if that makes sense. That being said, there were other top models who were Black at that time, not as famous or successful as Naomi or Tyra, like not names that the average person knows, not household names, but there was Beverly Peele, there was Brandy Quinones, I'm trying to think of who else, Cynthia Bailey, but these are all names. Are you impressed that I know this many early 90s Black top models? I actually really like the 90s fashion scene. Like, I can name a surprisingly high amount of 90s top models. I love that era of models and the beauty standard. I feel like today top models are not household names, and they're more like what's the word I'm looking for? Like, if they were all silhouettes, they would all kind of look the same. There isn't the same distinction. Whereas in the 90s, these girls had their own identity, and maybe it's also because it was pre-social media. So models were allowed to have personalities in order to brand themselves as separate, right? Like Cindy Crawford, Claudia Schiffer, Christy Turlington, Linda Evangelista. It's like Naomi, Tyra, they all had a different look, a different vibe. Kate Moss, even though Kate Moss was a little bit later. I feel like nowadays top models are more like stock models. That's the phrase I was looking for, stock models, meaning they're kind of all the same. And truthfully, that is a model's job. A model is not supposed to have their own identity. They're there just to like be a walking clothes hanger. I mean, historically, that's what a model was. They're there to showcase the clothes. It's not for them to build their own brand. But the 90s, I think, really changed that. I think the 90s became this time where the models became bigger than the clothes. And when I say that I like the beauty standard of the 90s, what I mean is that these women were sexy and they were beautiful. Some of them had curves. Nowadays, I feel like top models are very lanky. Oftentimes they don't look healthy. Like, they're not traditionally beautiful. They might be interesting looking, but oftentimes they don't look healthy to me. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But back to Tyra and Naomi. So in 2005, Tyra has the Tyra Banks show, and she invites Naomi Campbell onto the show to address this alleged feud that they've had for over a decade. The reason I wanted to do this video is because I find the public narrative, the evolution of the public narrative around this kind of feud fascinating. At the time, I think people were much more sympathetic towards Tyra Banks with this whole thing. I think Naomi was seen as the aggressor and the villain, particularly because around this time, Naomi also kept getting into these like lawsuits. She kept getting in trouble for like chucking her phone at assistants and being physically aggressive. So then when you bring up this feud, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, right? It's like, it's easy to side with Tyra Banks because Tyra Banks was always the really professional model. You've never heard of her like throwing her phone at an assistant. So naturally, I think people sided with Tyra. Also, I think this is when Tyra was at the peak of her celebrity in terms of she has this successful show, America's Next Top Model. She has this successful talk show. And naturally, that just makes people more likely to side with you that they see you on TV every day, right? They invite you into their living room and they're making their morning coffee watching your TV show. You feel very familiar. And I think Naomi comes from that old school top model era of, again, you have to remember this is pre-social media. So she's still part of that elusive mystique of a top model where you don't really know them that well. And I remember in the early days of YouTube, seeing this interview and in the comments, people being like, Naomi is such a classic bully. She doesn't remember anything that Tyra talks about, which you'll see in some of these clips that I show. But the narrative has changed considerably since, and in the last few years, particularly since the pandemic, people have really done a deep dive on Tyra Banks and her legacy, particularly with America's Next Top Model, in saying she's not that innocent and she's perpetuated a lot of these elements that feel like bullying towards these other young models. So I'm going to show you some clips. I'm going to react to them. I'm so curious what you guys think about this. And I'll share my final sort of verdict. I've seen this interview so many times, so my thought process has even evolved over time. Let's get into it.
This is not easy for me. I know it's not easy for you too, especially with so many years and years of...
But I thought it was a good idea.
What did you think when because I didn't want to call you personally because I wanted the first time for us to see each other. It's been a while.
I didn't want to see you before the show because I think it's better to be fresh. But I'm happy to be here. I'm really happy. And I said yes right away.
Yeah. I want to go back to when I was 17 years old. Mm-hmm. So that was about, 14 years ago.
Well, how old was I? I was 17. I was
21.
Yeah, 21, so, 1991.
Yeah, 1991. And I don't know if you know this, but even before I left for Paris, I had your pictures plastered all over my bedroom walls.
I didn't know.
Yeah, all.
Oh.
I had your pictures all over my bedroom walls. And I don't know if you remember. Do you remember the Azadina Laya fashion show?
Yeah, when we had the braids.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. And the little white frilly things. Yeah, I remember.
So you remember that fashion show?
Yeah.
And I called my aunt. I said, she's right behind me. Oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. She's right here. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Just a couple of weeks ago, I was at home looking at her pictures, and now I'm in a fashion show with her. But Naomi, do you remember what you said to me?
Now, I want you something awful and cruel.
Awful.
What did I say?
You said, I heard you talking about me.
Which I do. I hear everything from everywhere.
Yes. No, you said you heard me physically. You were right behind me. You heard me talking about you. You called me the B word, and you said, and we have a photo shoot to do in Anguilla, and it's not going to be pleasant if you're talking about me like that.
I probably did say that.
Why did you say that?
Because I probably just heard the tail end or just thought it must be negative, which it wasn't negative, so now it's something new. So I'm really sorry.
That was upsetting.
Okay, so first comment on this, and this is important to mention because I feel like it's a theme throughout all of these clips. There's a general I don't give a fuck energy that I get from Naomi throughout this interview. And it's palpable here in the way that she smiles back at Tyra. Like it maybe it's in my head, but it almost feels patronizing that Tyra is clearly very serious about this. Like Tyra has not gotten over this. It's been over a decade. And and by the way, I can totally get that. Like in the comments, some people are like, what the fuck is wrong with Tyra that a decade later, she's still upset about this. Meanwhile, Naomi doesn't care. I can totally understand how something that happened when you were 17 totally screwed with you, that your idol like hated you and was a bitch to you. But the juxtaposition of Tyra being so serious and still very like crestfallen over all this, and then Naomi being like, oh yeah, I probably did say that. Like she's so casual about it and so seemingly blasé about it. I just find that juxtaposition like already kind of cringy to watch. So Tyra then proceeds to share several anecdotes from the 90s, backstage at fashion shows and photo shoots, stuff like that, where she really takes stock of every time that Naomi was a bitch to her and displayed at best unprofessional behavior, at worst like diva mean girl behavior. And you realize that Tyra is weaving a story here of, you were my bully and it really ruined my life at the time. Like it ruined any high that I could feel from being a top model because I had you as like my bully on set.
And then you said, I have to ask you something. Right. See, I remember this because I was so new and young. You said, I have to ask you something. Do they try to make you look like me?
Right.
And I said, I don't know about so much now, but in LA, yeah, they really did with the little short black whips
that.
and
you
stuff.
You told me that, yeah,
yes.
I remember.
And Naomi, you got up, pushed me away and said, yeah, I thought so. And you turned.
I did.
You went from the sweetest woman that was giving me vitamins to someone that terrified me on that trip.
Oh my God.
And
understandable, I can understand.
I was told on that trip that I was sent home because you didn't want me there anymore. So I didn't finish that trip.
True.
That's what I was told.
I don't have the power of Anna Wintour.
What I gather from Naomi's reactions though is that A, she doesn't really cop to it. B, she has a response that feels dismissive in that she's often like, yeah, that doesn't really sound like me. I don't think that's something that I would do.
You came up to me right when I was about to walk out and you said something. And it's so funny because it was so surreal at the time when you said it. I didn't think that you could actually say something like that.
What did I say?
You said something like, you'll never be me, don't ever think that you'll be me, and something like that. I said that? Yes.
I can't think, that's something, I'm not that, I'm very specific. I'm very much, I know the person that I am, and I'm not someone to go and give myself away and say that to anybody. I've never said that in my life. So, but if that's what you remember, I accept that, but it doesn't sound like me to people that would know me.
So then it becomes this awkward dynamic that you're watching, right? Which is this typical thing of he said, she said, right? They're both claiming very different scripts, very different stories. And then you wonder what's the truth. They can't both be telling the truth. With these situations, the truth is typically somewhere in the middle, right? Tyra probably really let this get to her, which is she's entitled to it. I mean, she was a young girl, you know, in Paris, in a different country. But Naomi's also probably here thinking, wait a minute. I also was a young girl in a foreign country, and I also was dealing with the same shit you were dealing with between creepy photographers and creepy designers and you know, catty models. I think she was probably thinking to herself during this conversation, like, yeah, you know what? I probably was a bitch to you at moments, but you're now roasting me on your talk show. Like, I'm on your turf. I came to visit your show, and I think you just want to make me look like a villain.
I'm not sure if you're understanding how much it was painful for me, and I think it was truly a painful time for you, but I don't want to speak for you. But, and I don't think you know this either, that experience between you and I was one of the most difficult times in my entire life. In my entire
See, for me,
life.
I can be really honest. I love modeling. I love this industry. It's given me a lot. It's shown me a lot. It's made me travel the world and meet amazing people. But with what I'm going through in my life in the last 5 or 6 years and what I've gone through and what I've come to know in making my mistakes, in maturing with my family, with myself, with my relationships. It's not life-threatening and it's not that deep.
So I find this conversation fascinating to watch because I totally think that Naomi was a bitch to Tyra Banks. I totally believe that she, especially because she admits that she went through a phase of really indulging in drugs and alcohol. I've been around enough people who consistently do drugs in Miami to see that like their behavior becomes irrational. Like up and down, up and down. 1 minute they're happy and they're your friend. The next minute they're mad that you gave them the wrong look or something. So I completely believe that what Tyra's sharing, these are all valid stories. But I also now have the view that Tyra is digging at a story here to not only paint a narrative of Naomi's a villain, but to psychoanalyze Naomi on this show. It feels very Oprah-esque in that way of like, we're gonna get to the root of why you're a bitch. When I first saw this interview over a decade ago, I think I really was Team Tyra, like a lot of people. And nowadays, if you look at the comments of this interview on YouTube, you'll see that people are so much more Team Naomi, and they see that Tyra is in her own way actually using a more subtle mean girl energy of manipulating and weaving a narrative here, right? I think, personally, I think they both played a role in this. I think neither of them is an angel. I think Naomi Campbell most definitely bullied Tyra Banks, but I also think that Tyra Banks really enjoyed using this moment to get her power back towards her bully. I think Tyra Banks in this interview is that classic person who didn't get over that one person that really didn't like them, that she wanted validation from. That's really what this is about. Tyra Banks desperately wants validation from her former bully. Whereas Naomi Campbell is like, this is not that deep, girl. Like, there are much bigger things in the world to worry about. And I think they're both right. Like, they're both right and they're both wrong. It's two totally different like energies and coping mechanisms, two different personality types. And nothing highlights this more to me than the very end of this conversation, where Naomi Campbell suddenly promotes her perfumes, and then you realize, oh, this, like, that's why she agreed to do this, so she could promote her own projects. And she's really bad at promoting her perfumes. And Tyra steps in, moves the bottles around on the table to be camera friendly, and really tries to like get it together for Naomi to promote this effectively.
And
She just don't know how to display it. Explain it all backwards.
body lotions and
I know you're trying not to be very product placement heavy.
I'm not good at this at all.
Yeah.
Body lotions,
This is how you do it.
and shower gel.
I know how this is.
And I
so
can
she's
use
being
product
all
placement
modest.
for other people, but not for myself.
Even though Naomi says that these mostly are sold overseas, if you want to get them, you can go to tyrashow.com and you can find out how you can get all of Naomi Campbell's products.
And in that moment, you realize at the end of the day, Naomi Campbell was a girl who fell into fashion, realized she was really good at it, and stuck to it. And that's what she is. She's a model first. Tyra Banks is a businesswoman first. And that's what a lot of this conflict is about. One is a super logical, practical person, meaning Tyra, who really like can't fathom, still can't understand, like, damn, I was at the top of my game. I've done all these things. And yet I walk into a room with this woman, Naomi, and I still, you know, I go back to that 17-year-old girl who's like shaking in her boots. Whereas Naomi's like, she comes from the fashion world. She's been around, 20 Coke lines in one night. You know what I mean? I got a fashion show after this. They come from such different worlds. And I think that they don't know how to communicate with somebody like that. Naomi is used to that old school mindset of get over it, do your job. I'll respect you when I feel you're worthy of my respect kind of thing. Whereas Tyra kind of comes more from that new school American mentality of like, you hurt my feelings, why can't you just say you're sorry? So they just can't see eye to eye. This is not working. It's getting more and more uncomfortable because Tyra is so clearly seeking some kind of validation from Naomi Campbell, and Naomi Campbell is just not willing to give it. Naomi Campbell is like, I can't believe I signed up for this shit. I can't believe I came here for this on Tyra Banks' show to be villainized after all these years. But then something interesting happens, which is that they take a break. Tyra's like, all right, next part of the show. You can tell that she's over and she's like, let's just finish this. Like, this is not going anywhere. And Naomi stops her and finally addresses everything and apologizes.
I have something I have to say.
What's that?
I have something I have to say before we start. However I've affected you, however you felt that I've affected you, I take my responsibility. And I just want to say I'm very proud of you for being a powerful black woman sitting here and doing what you're doing. And please continue. Okay,
Thank you so much. Naomi, thank you so much for saying that, because I have to admit, before the break, it was a beginning of a healing.
I know.
But I still felt like,
closure.
yeah, I
Absolutely.
still felt like I don't think she's owning up to anything, or, you know, and by you just saying that one thing, you have no idea what my heart is doing now. Thank you so much.
You can tell that this is Naomi in that break, realizing behind the scenes like, oh shit, I'm not gonna look like a bitch because I didn't submit to Tyra's interrogation. And this is where you realize that they're both very smart women, but in very different ways. Tyra was weaving a narrative for her show, which is just part of the deal, right? Any talk show, you're gonna try to find a spin on every single episode. That's just the way that it works. It's the same thing as being a journalist, you know, being a reporter, being a writer. You're trying to find some spin, right? Some angle and like a thesis. But Naomi, behind the scenes, it must have clicked for her in this break between filming. Like, wait a minute, I've already been made to look like the bad guy so many times in the media. I don't want to give Tyra that satisfaction or that power. If it makes her feel better for me to apologize, I'm just gonna apologize. But I love this apology because to me it's a fake apology. Like, whenever somebody says, if I hurt you, or if somehow I had an effect on you, that's not a real apology. A real apology is, I hear what you're saying, I upset you, I'm sorry that I upset you. So Naomi carefully plays the game of, all right, bitch, I'll give you what you want, but to me, this is all bullshit. I'm really curious how you guys interpret this feud between Tyra and Naomi. Again, so interesting that the public narrative around this kind of rivalry has totally changed over time. I'm still one of those people though, and this is the same as, interestingly, as the video I made on the Charmed drama, the drama between the women of the cast with the show Charmed. I'm one of those people that I always think everybody plays a role and nobody's hands are totally clean. I know that that sounds like playing Switzerland, but to me it's more about accountability. Like, you don't have a conflict with somebody without both of you having played a role, with the exception of somebody being like an insanely toxic narcissist. We hear this word narcissist all the time, and people now say that Tyra is a narcissist. You hear this a lot on social media. I personally think both of these women being top models in their game, there's absolutely no way that they both don't have some narcissistic tendencies. I think you kind of have to have that in a sense. People call it tough skin, but I think it's actually, you have to have some narcissism in order to thrive in the modeling industry. In an industry that is literally prioritizing you and celebrating you, rewarding you with success based on purely your physicality. Like, there has to be some narcissism that develops if you didn't already come to the game with narcissism, you know? Neither of them is the sole villain and neither of them is the sole victim. I think they're both, really, if we're talking about victimhood, I think they both were screwed over by an industry that's demonstrative of overall society, in that there are elements of misogyny, there are elements of capitalism at its worst and pitting people against each other, and then of course this element of racism and colorism more specifically. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm so curious to hear how you feel about this.